Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again.
President Trump filling up his cabinet in his latest big nomination, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services Secretary. That's where we're going to start tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And President-elect Donald Trump wants Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his health secretary. Shocking to many, but not a surprise for those who have been watching closely following the campaign.
I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines. The only thing I told him, though, Bobby, you got to do one thing, do whatever you want. You just go ahead, work on the pesticides, work on making women's health. He's so into women's health. And, you know, he's really unbelievable. It's such a passion.
Kennedy has been outspoken about his anti-vax stance and his beliefs on COVID for years.
Can you name any vaccines that you think are good?
I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Now, as head of the Health and Human Services, Kennedy would be in charge of 13 different divisions, including the FDA and the CDC, where he says he would gut entire sections of the department. But despite this, his nomination is being met with some bipartisan support. Colorado Governor and Democrat Jared Polis saying that he's optimistic about Kennedy taking on Big Pharma. And in the hours since President-elect Trump has picked Kennedy to run HHS, he's also tapped former Congressman Doug Collins for Secretary of Veteran Affairs and his defense lawyer Todd Blanche as the Deputy Attorney General. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now. Vaughn, RFK Jr. for HHS, you talked to him a few weeks back. What would his first order of business be here?
It would be coming in and beginning to root out and clear out parts of the HHS and those 13 health agencies, from the FDA to the CDC. For him, he has made the case that pharmaceutical companies have too much influence inside of the federal government's health agencies, and therefore there needs to be an effective cleansing and removal of some of the workforce in order to ensure that priorities are changed. Take a listen to part of the conversation I had with him down in Palm Beach just a few days ago. You say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top-level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go, that are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids.
We can objectively, Gadi, say that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's a complex individual with a broad subsect of positions that some people agree with and others disagree with. And for him, he is an environmental lawyer that is big on particularly his outspokenness against the over-processing of foods in the U.S. food company industry, but also pharmaceutical companies, and that his criticism of what he calls chronic disease epidemic in America and obesity, those are issues where he has questioned the ingredients and the sugar levels that are put into the U.S. food supply, and he's questioned, though, also, for instance, fluoride being in the U.S. water supply. But then on vaccines, he, as some of the bites he suggested, he says he's not anti-vax, but there is not a single vaccine that he has made the case is a wholly safe and effective vaccine. And even if you go back to the COVID pandemic, he was outspoken saying that the FDA was wrong to grant emergency authorization for several of the COVID vaccines from being available on the market.
And it's also interesting to note the history here. Like, Obama once considered RFK Jr. for a cabinet role as well, right?
Right. That's exactly where you're looking at somebody who is a longtime member of the Democratic Party, voted for Joe Biden even in 2020. You referenced in 2008 he was under consideration to head the Environmental Protection Agency. As that environmental lawyer, he talks often about clean air and clean water, and that's where sort of as a political candidate, I went to several of his rallies when he was running as an independent presidential candidate this go around, and there's issues that definitely attracted more Republican voters, and there were issues that attracted, Democratic voters that generally have a more pro-environmental, anti-fuel and drilling positions. And so really he's a complicated figure that ultimately in August dropped out of the presidential race himself, back to Donald Trump. And by and large, he was gathering anywhere from 5 to 10% in the polls before dropping out. And we saw much of that support go to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump repaying his friend and political ally with this position here, as if he is confirmed as being the head of Health and Human Services Department.
And Vaughn, broadly speaking here, I've been dying to ask you about recess appointments. Are we going to see a play for fast-tracking or sidestepping confirmations for any of these appointments?
Exactly. We're typically used to seeing the confirmation process play out, where these nominees, like Kennedy, they go before the Senate, and then it takes a simple majority of the senators, 51 senators, to get them approved. But Donald Trump, just a few days ago, openly asserted that the Senate Republicans should allow him to do what they call a recess appointment, which is adjourn Congress. Congress goes away, and instead of the Senate confirming the nominees, the president has the power then to, because the Senate is away and adjourned, go and confirm and have these individuals elevated to these positions without the advice and consent of the Senate. And when you're looking at past administrations, right, there's more than 4,000 different political appointees that from any administration ultimately are nominated by the president and then confirmed by the Senate. And we have seen historically recess appointments used by administrations to go and get their nominees up for confirmation. Yet we have not seen anything so drastic as a proposal as this, as to unilaterally have potentially cabinet members from Kennedy to Tulsi Gabbard to Hegseth to Matt Gaetz be confirmed through that process. So the stakes are really high. It's going to be a big question mark over the next couple of weeks up on Capitol Hill, whether these confirmation proceedings go forward in the traditional way, Gadi.
Yeah, drastic proposals seem to be the name of the game these days. Vaughn Hilliard in West Palm Beach, Florida, thank you. Now let's bring in Executive Director of the American Public Health Association, Dr. Georges Benjamin. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us. What's your reaction to this news, and what's the word in your medical circles?
Yeah, I think we're all very disappointed. We think he's the wrong guy for this position. He's not, he's not trained. He's not got the management experience, and certainly has not got the trust of the American people for this particular job.
Something RFK Jr. has been talking a lot about is nutrition. Let's play this ad that they ran for you.
Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
Is there some truth to what RFK is saying there? Do you think that it is important to go after some of these products when it comes to nutrition?
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt that we have too many people eating high fat, high salt, low nutritious foods. But there's a way to do that. They can support many of the chronic disease programs that we have in this nation. Every state, for example, does not have funding for these chronic disease programs to deal with obesity. Obesity is one of our epidemics that we have today. And so he's right about the problem, but not necessarily completely right about the solution.
Switching gears here a little bit, global pandemics are something that are, to all of us now, a very real threat. What would a government response to another novel coronavirus pandemic look like with somebody that's got mixed opinions on vaccine efficacy?
I think you really need to have in these jobs someone who's not going to have to learn on the job, and can hit the ground running. And he has a great deal of confusion around the role of vaccines. He even, during COVID, encouraged the use of an unauthorized treatment, hydroxychloroquine, which was ultimately shown not to be very effective. And he knew that when he was promoting it. So I think trust is a big issue in my mind, and most of the mind, I think, of most of the public health community.
Dr. Benjamin, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And digging a little deeper into another controversial Trump cabinet pick, it's the now former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who abruptly resigned from his House seat last night. He is Trump's pick to become the next Attorney General of the United States. And after you hear the sound we're about to play, you might just think Gaetz willed this into existence. Take a listen to this.
Maybe I should serve as Attorney General of the United States. I'd be easy on marijuana and tough on big tech. Wouldn't that be a nice reversal? If necessary, I'd fire every little kicker at the J. Edgar Hoover building and send them all packing.
That was December 2020. Now Gaetz's nomination has raised eyebrows on both sides of the aisle. He was the focus of a DOJ investigation for sex trafficking, which was eventually dropped, but he was the subject of an investigation by the House Ethics Panel, and that's been going on since 2021 over whether he engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. That investigation went away as soon as Gaetz resigned last month, but the question now becomes, will that report see the light of day? Let's now go to NBC's Ryan Nobles over at Capitol Hill. Ryan, let's talk a little bit more about this ethics probe here. Senators are pushing to see it before the confirmation hearing, so it is kind of still in play, right? Could the public see it as well?
Yeah, I think it's very much in play, Gadi. The House Ethics Committee is going to meet tomorrow morning. There's the real possibility that they vote to release the report. There's precedent. The House Ethics Committee has released reports after members of Congress have left their post in the past. And as you rightly point out, the senators that are going to make this decision on confirming Matt Gaetz to the Attorney General spot desperately want to see what's in this report. Take a listen to what Dick Durbin, who's the current chair of the Judiciary Committee, had to say about it earlier today.
I want to preserve this report. I want to have the documentation behind it and have a chance to review it carefully, both Democrats and Republicans. That is our constitutional responsibility. If for some reason this House Ethics Committee report is concealed from the American people, it raises a serious question about this nomination.
And it's not just Democrats that are saying that. Republicans are saying it as well. If they don't get the report itself, they at least want the underlying evidence. Gadi, it's pretty clear that they want to know what's in that report before they vote on Matt Gaetz as the next Attorney General.
And what's the overall vibe on Capitol Hill about this?
I think there is a great deal of skepticism, and for many reasons. First of all, there are the allegations against Matt Gaetz, his charge of having sex with an underage girl, his use of drugs, partying, things along those lines. Those are all not becoming of a potential attorney general. But there's also the issue that he really doesn't have any experience in this line of work. Yes, he is a licensed attorney, but he hasn't really spent that much time in a courtroom. He's never been a prosecutor. He's never been a judge. And this is the most important law enforcement job in the country. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of skepticism from both Republicans and Democrats. Take a listen.
You know, I mean, I would describe it as God-tier level trolling.
I don't think it's a serious nomination for the Attorney General. We need to have a serious Attorney General.
I have concerns about him, about the way he disrupted and really destroyed the House of Representatives for several months. He's got a really steep hill to climb to get lots of votes, including mine.
Now, you'll notice that was Kevin Cramer, the last senator speaking. He is a Republican. He said that he has a steep hill to climb, but he didn't suggest that he might not be able to climb it. And that's because there isn't one Republican that's come forward and said that they're definitively a no vote on Matt Gaetz. And we have to remember, Gadi, that Donald Trump just convincingly won an election. And he won an election where he didn't hide who he was or what he was going to do. And I think that weighs on a lot of senators who maybe under any other circumstance would never support a nominee like Matt Gaetz. But they've pledged their loyalty to Donald Trump. They said they were going to execute his agenda. And this is what Donald Trump is telling him he needs in order to execute that agenda. So there is still the possibility, despite all the headwinds against him, that Matt Gaetz wins confirmation.
The president-elect is saying he needs this, but is there a possibility that he's sending a message to Congress with this pick?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening here. He is testing the limits of the loyalty that he is looking for from these senators. This is as difficult a position as he could possibly put them in, but I think he believes that he has the political capital to do it. And if any of these senators cross him, then they could find themselves facing the wrath of the MAGA support that Donald Trump has proven can lead to electoral success. So this is going to be a very difficult position for these senators, and we're going to have to see how it plays out.
Quite the litmus test. Ryan Nobles, thank you. And in Florida, the state is suing FEMA, claiming that it denied aid to Trump supporters on purpose after the recent hurricanes there. Florida's AG claiming that FEMA told workers to ignore homes with Trump signs or flags when providing disaster relief. A spokesperson with FEMA says the agency does not comment on pending litigation. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas. Guad, can you break down what this lawsuit says specifically?
Gadi, so the lawsuit filed by the state of Florida has a lot of information coming from an employee of FEMA that was terminated. So first off, the language used in the lawsuit says that workers or FEMA teams were told to avoid specifically homes advertising Trump. They also make specific reference to Florida. They say that according to a whistleblower, at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags in Lake Placid, Florida, were skipped. This at the end of October and into November due to that guidance. Florida was affected by 2 different hurricanes this year, which after the hurricanes, FEMA workers came in offering that government support. One of those was Hurricane Milton. That went through the coast and all of Central Florida. So it was after Hurricane Milton that this area in Lake Placid had been affected. They also had a tornado report there. So FEMA teams were in the area offering support to a lot of the people that lived in that affected area. Now, the lawsuit indicates that some of those teams received the guidance. Now, it also has information that they are saying came from a FEMA employee that, again, has been terminated, indicating that this also happened in the Carolinas, where some of the workers came in after Hurricane Helene affected some of those areas. You know, this lawsuit, what's really interesting, it's using information that they say they found out from a whistleblower, but also from the employee herself, who was already terminated. So there's a lot to get into. In the lawsuit, they also accuse FEMA of knowing that this behavior was taking place, or that the supervisor that's been terminated was asking the teams not to go into those areas. They're saying in the lawsuit that FEMA was aware that that was happening, Gadi.
And the FEMA administrator is named in this suit as well. Have we heard from her?
Right. So the lawsuit is naming 2 individuals, the supervisor that's been terminated, as well as the FEMA administrator. Now, she shared a statement before the lawsuit was filed, but after the employee was terminated. In that statement, the FEMA administrator, Diane Criswell, said that the employee that had been terminated advised her assistance team, the survivor assistance team, not to go into homes with yard signs supporting President-elect Trump, adding it is a clear violation of FEMA's core values and principles to help people regardless of their political affiliation, adding that that was reprehensible. Again, this was shared before that lawsuit was filed. Now we have a lawsuit that has been filed that is also being filed against FEMA administrator. Gadi?
And what about the supervisor here? Did the supervisor respond at all? What did she say?
So, Gadi, this is where it gets really interesting, because she has now spoken to the media, and she's giving a lot of details as to why that guidance was given. And this is where it gets very interesting, and the statements are almost contradicting. She is saying that those homes, she specifically, the language she used is that they omitted those homes for safety precautions, not because of political play. So essentially what she is saying is that the teams were advised to stay away from what they considered hostile neighborhoods. And Gadi, if you remember, both after Helene and Milton, there were reports of hostile residents when it came to the FEMA teams that were coming to a lot of these neighborhoods. And the worker, the now terminated supervisor, is saying that the guidance that was issued to a lot of these teams for safety was to stay away from these neighborhoods that they considered hostile. This is something that she said in an interview after she was terminated, but before the lawsuit was filed. And what's interesting, Gadi, is that the lawsuit is actually mentioning clips that were placed on X, Twitter X, before the lawsuit was filed. Those clips were on there, and they're making reference to those clips, and it's in those clips that we can hear her talk about why these neighborhoods were avoided. Let's hear part of one of those interviews.
We will not subject our people to continuous verbal abuse or hostile encounters. We're going to avoid the ones that meet the community trend of political hostility, and they just so happen to have campaign signages in their front yard.
So you can hear her explaining why she asked her teams to avoid these homes or neighborhoods. And she also did mention that they didn't specifically avoid homes, but instead what they had identified again as hostile communities. Now, the other important thing is she believes that she's being used, she's the scapegoat from FEMA, she says, because she says FEMA was aware that this guidance was being given to the teams. But then we have the statement from FEMA where they indicate that she has been terminated, and and also making it seem like they were not aware, right, that they were issuing these this guidance. But now we have the lawsuit, which is mentioning or naming both the employee that was terminated and the FEMA administrator.
A lawsuit we will be keeping a very close eye on. Guad Venegas, thank you. And turning now to what is still a very active hurricane season. Right now, we are keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Sara as it moves towards Central America. That storm gaining strength earlier today, becoming the 18th named storm of the season. It could bring life-threatening and catastrophic flooding to northern Honduras over the next few days. But its track after that and its potential impacts to the United States, that is all still very uncertain. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now with the forecast. Hey there, Bill.
So, Gadi, yes, we have a new tropical storm, Sara, as you mentioned, and this one is not going to be a huge problem for the U.S. A couple days ago, we were like, uh-oh. But now this is a huge issue for areas like Honduras. So this is our 18th named storm this season. We don't know yet if this will get to hurricane status. It's looking very unlikely. And this is kind of another very active storm season in the Atlantic Basin. Average is only 14. Now we're up to 18. We've had about 4 more hurricanes than normal and about 2 more major hurricanes. We were expecting a very active season this year, and we did get it. And what was really wild was how many storms we've had that have become hurricanes. Every one that's in red here has become a hurricane. So most of the storms that formed did become hurricanes this year. Sara, though, because it's close proximity to Honduras, does not look like that's going to be the case. So here's the location from the National Hurricane Center. It's right along the coast of Honduras. Anywhere you see the bright reds and yellows, that's where we're watching the torrential rain and the thunderstorm. And as long as this stays right along the coast, it's going to continue to wrap the moisture into the mountains. We're talking epic amounts of rain are possible. And just look how long this is going to linger. It takes till Sunday to get to Belize, and then it's going to be so weak by the time it shouldn't even be a tropical storm anymore when it moves over the Yucatan, and it may just completely dissipate. That would be best case scenario. But with this forecast right along the coast of Honduras with the mountains, we could easily see someone getting 2 to 3 feet of rain. So mudslides, landslides, life-threatening flash flooding for areas of the northern portions of Honduras right along the ocean. Not as much rain, but still high totals, around 5 to 10 inches possible for the Yucatan and in areas of Belize. And as far as Florida goes, you know, yesterday we were watching a lot of these taking a stronger storm and then possibly going to Florida. Now all of these lines that go to Florida are extremely weak. I mean, we're talking tropical depressions maybe, not even tropical storms. This will mostly just be some rain if it even ever gets to Florida. So concerns in Florida from this, we'll still watch it, but very, very little. And Gadi, will end with what's going to happen tomorrow. Another day of dangerous weather in the Northeast because of the dry conditions. We're already looking at critical risk and elevated risk. Red flag warnings are already up for this area, and the winds are going to be very gusty again. I'm sure we'll be talking about that tomorrow night.
Bill Cairns, thank you. In Paris, protests outside of a soccer match between France and Israel with a huge police presence across the capital.
Viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina!
French police say security measures were 4 times more than they usually are for soccer games there, and that is in direct response to what happened in Amsterdam when violent chaos between local pro-Palestinian protesters and Israeli fans erupted outside another match. Claudia Lavanga has the latest from Paris.
Well, on Thursday night, the soccer game between France and Israel ended without any major incidents, despite security concerns and despite fear that the same scenes we've seen in Amsterdam last week before and after the game between a local team from Tel Aviv and a Dutch team could be repeated here in the streets of Paris. And that is why the police had deployed almost 4 times the number of police officers that they usually deploy in a soccer team of this magnitude. 4,000 police officers, 2,500 inside and around the stadium, and the rest patrolling the streets of Paris and, of course, the public transport, to the point that walking around in Paris on Thursday night, you could see more police officers than soccer fans. Now, there was also a protest that went ahead before the game, organized by pro-Palestinian groups who were against this game. They said they had to cancel this game because of what happened last week in Amsterdam. They were flying the Palestinian flags, and there were about a couple of hundred people there. There were no clashes with the police. There was no violence. In the end, that crowd also dissipated, and so did the fear that violence could erupt here in the streets of Paris on Thursday night.
Claudio Lavanga, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, no joke, satirical website The Onion bidding in a big way in an auction for the controversial InfoWars site. What that means for the firebrand Alex Jones and the brand there. Plus, the frantic moments as Seattle police hunt down a suspect wanted for a stabbing spree, how he was finally tracked down after at least 9 attacks. And later this hour, artificial intelligence under a Trump administration. We already know Elon Musk is in the president-elect's ear, but how could AI policy shift over the next 4 years? That's in tonight's Future of Everything. Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. The FBI has raided the home of the owner of Polymarket. A source says they seized his cell phone and some other devices. That was one of the companies that allowed betting on the election, but it's still unclear what today's raid was about. And the FBI says they stopped a potential terrorist attack from happening in Houston. Federal officials say a man has been arrested for trying to provide support for the ISIS terror group. Police say he was spreading ISIS propaganda on social media accounts. And you are looking live at a rescue scene in Louisville, Kentucky, underway right now. We are being told the crews there appear to have just rescued a man out of the rubble of a collapsed building. You can see dozens of first responders all around there. That collapse happened this morning. It has turned into an extremely complicated rescue. This is not the collapsed building from a few days ago. This one is a new one. And apparently that man got trapped and fell possibly in a 10-foot trench. And 4 people are accused of a fake bear attack. They are now facing insurance fraud charges in Los Angeles. Now, the gang reported to their insurance company that their car was attacked by a bear, leaving damage inside of the vehicle. But the footage from the security camera shows that the bear was actually a person inside of a costume. Police say they found a bear costume at the suspect's house. And could Phoenix be the city of 27,000 more trees? The city, smack dab in the middle of a desert, is hoping so. They are planning on planting thousands of trees to try to cool things down, investing some $60 million over the next few years. The city says it is critical to their future as they've had record-breaking heat waves. And now on to some more news that might have you wondering if you heard correctly. The Onion just legally took over Alex Jones's InfoWars. And I know that sounds like a headline straight out of The Onion's proudly fake news site, but that actually happened in real life. And who better to break some of this down for us than NBC News senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny, who specializes in dis and misinformation. And ironically, our old colleague, Ben Collins, who went on to become the CEO of The Onion, he might be behind a lot of this. How did this happen, Brandy?
Indeed, Gadi. Our old colleague, Ben Collins, who was a senior reporter on the disinformation beat with me, went on to become CEO of The Onion. And, you know, how this happened is because Alex Jones owed about $1.5 billion to several families in Connecticut and Texas, stemming from defamation lawsuits that they brought against him for his many times saying that basically the Sandy Hook shooting that killed their children never happened, and that it was a hoax, and that they were all in on it. Like, he said a bunch of things and sort of supported guests saying these things, and a jury found him liable for all of this money. Now, he has spent the last 2 years basically playing a cat and mouse game with bankruptcy attorneys and a bankruptcy investigation into how much money he has. So finally, we were at this moment where a judge said, okay, it's auction time. And we had a couple of people bid. There was a local entrepreneur, the AP is saying bid $3.5 million. We're not sure how much The Onion bid, but The Onion had something else that these other bidders didn't have. They had the support of the Connecticut families of Sandy Hook victims. So it's unclear just went on because it was a secret bidding process, but it ended up today with The Onion getting it.
And do we know what The Onion's specific goal is here? And do they get, do they get the armored truck? Do they get all those supplements that Alex Jones was selling? Do they get everything that was in the studio?
Well, they do get a lot of that stuff. So they're getting the desk, they get the cameras, they get a lot of the actual stuff that it takes to make a show, as you know. They are also getting the supplements. So now, Ben Collins has to figure out what to do with all of those supplements. Now, here's what they said they were going to do with that. Here's what we know about the purchase, right? We know that the auction firm said basically they have no restrictions. You can do whatever you want with what you get. And the funds of the sale are going to Jones' estate creditors, and that includes the parents of the Sandy Hook victims. They plan at The Onion to rebuild the InfoWars website. It's off right now, but they're going to hire humor writers and content creators, and they're going to have a new platform. What that looks like is sort of yet to be seen. And I will say that Ben, Mr. Collins, Mr. Onion, he gave us a statement, which is very tongue-in-cheek, but sort of apropos for him. And it says, "The Onion is proud to acquire InfoWars, and we look forward to continuing the storied tradition of scaring the site's users with lies until they fork over their cold, hard cash."
Yeah, I saw something along the lines like, why did you do this? Because it was funny or something along those lines. Jones, meanwhile, was streaming earlier today, saying things like he's not leaving until they come and turn the lights off. How did everything play out?
It was interesting. He was waiting for them to drag him out. They didn't do that. The court processors came and they, used some IT efforts to bring the website down. But when it came to his actual show, they said, we're not going to do that, and they left. It turns out that the other bidders have now said they requested an emergency hearing today, and they said, basically, it's not fair. The bidding process was secret, and that's not fair. They said, we think we bid more, and The Onion bid less, and so it's not fair that they should get it. So they're having another hearing at some, we don't know what time that will be or what day that will be yet. The judge has to decide, but this isn't quite over yet.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to see what's in Ben's bank account. Brandy, thank you so much for joining us. And coming up, what some people are calling the exodus, why the platform may be hemorrhaging users and where they are taking their messages now. But first, you got to see this. This right here, wait for it, this is the world's largest coral. It was just discovered by scientists in the Southwest Pacific. It is nearly 112 feet wide, 105 feet long. Unlike a reef made up of a lot of coral colonies, this is just one giant coral made of tiny polyps that have been growing for over 300 years. It is so big that scientists say you can even see it from space. We'll be right back. And tonight, we are getting a look at a terrifying moment in Seattle as a cop rushes to stop a stabbing rampage and finds chaos all around him.
He's about to come out on the 10th. About to come out on the 10th. Get on the ground. Stay right there. We're going to need more officers around this area because at this point I don't know how many victims we have. I've got at least one victim.
And police are now saying it wasn't just one stabbing spree, but several over the course of 2 days. NBC's David Noriega has been following all of this, joins us now. David, this video is remarkable. What are we seeing in this video? He rolls up. What happens then?
Yeah, so just to set the scene a little bit, this is a stabbing spree that started on Thursday, sort of overnight between Wednesday and Thursday. And the police had actually been looking for this guy for over 24 hours. Look at this map. And it's all happening in a very, very small area of Seattle. We have 5 stabbings that happened within a few blocks of each other between Thursday at 1:35 in the morning and Friday at 1 in the morning. So that roughly 24-hour period. Then that day, Friday around 2 p.m., the same suspect is believed to have stabbed about 5 people, 5 men, in one spree. So let's look at the video again. Take a look at this. The police officer gets out of his car. He runs through this sort of chain link fence, gets to where the suspect is there on the left behind that red van, right? And this is where he sort of starts realizing that he's onto something much bigger than what he thought. Those stairs that you see in this next video over there on the right, we'll play the video a little bit after this, but he realizes that there's one of the stabbing victims is right there to the left in that video that we're looking at now. That guy slumped over the stairs. And he's realizing basically that that is one of 5 stabbing victims that he's currently having to deal with. All of these witnesses kind of crowd around because witnesses, in addition to police officers, have been chasing this guy, the suspect. And that's when they visually identify the man that they detained as the suspect in these stabbings. Now, we have gotten a little bit more information about that subject. He's 37 years old. His name is Roland Jerome Lee. This information just came this afternoon, by the way. It took them about a week to charge him, and he's been charged with 5 counts in relation to those 5 stabbings. The original stabbings that happened between Thursday and Friday, those are still under investigation. He is the primary suspect for those stabbings, but he has not yet been charged for them.
Those victims, is everybody expected to survive? Or
everybody is expected to survive, thankfully, although the injuries were not anything to sneeze at. I mean, some people were taken to the hospital in critical condition. They've since been updated to serious condition. Some people required emergency surgery. So these were serious assaults. Thankfully, though, everyone is expected to survive.
Is there any motive, or is it still too early to tell?
We still don't know. This happened in a part of the city where there, you know, I'm sure you've spent some time in Seattle. This happened in a part of the city where there's a number of shelters. There's some issues with sort of drug use. A lot of people in town suspect it has to do with kind of goings on in that area, but we still don't have an exact motive.
Got it. David Noriega, thank you so much. And turning now to a major change coming to X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, owned by Elon Musk. And that change has to do with AI, but it's got some users threatening to leave the platform for alternative apps. Here's Savannah Sellers with a detailed explanation.
So, announcement, I am about to delete my Twitter.
I don't know about y'all, but I am closing my Twitter account.
Users of X, formerly Twitter, saying they're done with the platform on the eve of a big change. Tomorrow, the company will adopt new terms of service that explicitly state, by using X, you're agreeing to let your post be used to train AI, with seemingly no way to opt out.
That means that if you've posted some text, a photo, a video, that X can suck that up and put it into its large language model training database.
So X could then know personal information about you and even create content using your image. Even prior to these new terms, the day after the election, X lost more users than any day since Elon Musk bought it in 2022.
There are a few things fueling this exodus. The first is the change of terms of service. The other is just the presence of Elon Musk and what has happened to the platform and the overwhelming amount of content there that is really focused on the new president, Donald Trump, and also just full right-wing information, conspiracy theories, and posts.
Other social media sites are reaping the benefits. Blue Sky welcoming 2.5 million new users in the last week, and Meta's Threads up 15 million in November alone.
Savannah Sellers, thank you. And still ahead, Haiti in crisis. Vital aid cut off after those 3 U.S. flights were hit by gunfire. What we're learning about the surge in gang violence happening there next. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. A man blew himself up outside of Brazil's Supreme Court, and police there are calling that an act of terrorism. Now, this happened last night, and officials say 2 blasts happened, one in a nearby parking lot and another at the court entrance. Police say the only person killed was the attacker there. And President Biden has kicked off his last major international summit of his presidency with 6 days in Latin America. That trip, though, being overshadowed by Trump's election win. But the White House is insisting this trip still matters as Biden is expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And Israel says it allowed 15 aid trucks to enter northern Gaza yesterday. That aid came from the United Arab Emirates, but the UN agencies say they are not sure whether these trucks will reach their final destinations, claiming a logistic issue could be a problem. And the high cost of living was not only a key issue for voters here, but also in Sri Lanka. People there voted in a parliamentary election today. The country's 17 million voters had to choose from more than 8,000 candidates. Results are expected tomorrow. And now let's go to Haiti, where so many are trying to flee after a surge in gang violence there. NBC's Marissa Parra has the latest.
Tonight in Port-au-Prince, masses of Haitians are fleeing to safety, seen frantically packing their lives into cars, escaping what had once been considered one of the few areas in the capital safe from gang violence until now. Nonprofits like Agape Haiti are left unable to fly aid in.
There's a massive concern. We've got 20,000 pounds of supplies sitting on the floor that need to move.
It goes from here.
It was days ago when a Spirit Airlines plane was struck by bullets 7 times as it was preparing to land in Port-au-Prince Monday, instead diverting to the Dominican Republic, leaving one flight attendant hurt and the dozens others on board terrified.
The crew was very traumatized.
The FAA the next day pausing all civil U.S. flights to Haiti for a month, while Haiti's capital city weathers a week of violence amid political instability. It's been 3 years since Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated and almost 7 months since Ariel Henry resigned as prime minister, leaving behind a vacuum of power. Gangs have been violently fighting for control ever since. The Transitional Council fired the interim prime minister Sunday. And on Monday, as Alex Jones was being sworn in as the new prime minister, the State Department said gang-led efforts that erupted that day led to violent disruptions to airports, seaports, and roads.
Everyone is very scared. Everyone is very concerned. And I think everyone is tired of the situation.
Christophe Gurney from Doctors Without Borders says an ambulance of theirs was ambushed on Monday. The charity says vigilantes violently attacked the ambulance as 3 young people were being rushed to the hospital for gunshot wounds. 2 of them instead executed just outside the hospital, waiting to treat them, with volunteers and workers nearby.
They are traumatized, shocked. It's really the first time MSF staff is directly assaulted or aggressed by anyone in Haiti, and this is very shocking for us.
The aftermath of the violence left Port-au-Prince paralyzed. Offices, schools closed, and with 1 in 2 Haitians facing acute hunger, any pause in aid to the country could be devastating.
If we really have to stop or to stand by our activity, it will be a huge disaster for the civilians here.
Haiti hasn't seen a presidential election in years. The embattled Transitional Council was created to restore democracy, but trust in the council is razor thin as violence wears on. The UN reports close to 3,700 people have been killed from the violence since January.
So many people. Marissa Parra, thank you. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. We're going to be talking AI policy under Donald Trump's second term, the ideas and people who could be in the driver's seat for regulating the growing technology, plus explaining the potential ethics minefield because of President-elect Donald Trump's social media stake, why that might just be the tip of the iceberg. Stay tuned.
These are the real technology people. They're talking about AI. And they showed me things, but I've seen things that are so, you wouldn't even think it's possible. One of the top people, he said, "Oh, you're going to make a speech?" Yeah. He goes, click, click, click. And like 15 seconds later, he shows me my speech.
That's crazy.
Written.
That's crazy.
So beautifully. I said, I'm going to use this sucker.
That was Donald Trump as a presidential candidate, impressed by AI capabilities, not really diving into a lot of the technical, but in a few months, his administration will play a huge role in shaping its future, and big tech is a-buzzing. All the major CEOs seem to be welcoming the president-elect with open arms after his victory last week, but there is one name on everybody's lips.
Having a seat at the table changes everything for big tech.
He will also be influencing the incoming administration's AI policy in ways that are difficult to predict right now.
Making big statements about investment in AI is something we'll hear out of the Trump administration.
And joining us now is Sinead Bovell. She's a futurist, founder of the tech education company Way. Welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. Elon Musk has his own AI ambitions that are growing by the day. How do you see his seat at the table when it comes to AI policy from the government?
Yeah, so there are still some uncertainties. By and large, I will say we'll probably see a push for innovation in some ways and perhaps more advancement of his own AI company, xAI. But it's interesting when it comes to Elon Musk, because on the one hand, thinks some of the regulations around AI or some of the cautions around AI when it comes to things like bias, discrimination, need to be deprioritized, that we don't need to focus on that. But he is concerned in particular with one area of AI risk called existential risk, or risk that could cause civilizational damage. And I think it's important to preface that this is very debated in the AI world. There are many computer scientists that think that this is more sci-fi, and then there are some that believe this is the most important risk. So we're likely to see Elon Musk perhaps prioritize this when it comes to legislation, but other areas of legislation that could get in the way of what he would say is innovation and needing to move full speed ahead, taking a back seat.
And Trump says he's going to repeal Biden's executive order. If I recall, I mean, the gist of the executive order and all guardrails kind of speak to the whole existential question. So realistically, what does that look like? And did that executive order act as like a meaningful guardrail here?
Right. So the AI executive order put forward by the Biden administration, it was a pretty comprehensive framework on AI regulation. It's non-binding at this point in time. It did cover innovation and national security, but it did tend to focus on things like safety, privacy, and make sure that we don't go too fast when it comes to things like surveillance, responsible use of AI in government and in healthcare. That was kind of some of the premise of the executive order. It didn't talk too much about existential risk. However, it does require companies building the most frontier, the most advanced AI models, check in and report their safety risks to the federal government. So it covered it there. So when it comes to existential risk, Musk will probably be in the driver's seat when it comes to how the federal government moves forward with regulating this, if this is something that they move forward with.
It's going to be such a fascinating time and potentially a scary time. What would a guardrail look like, or what would a series of guardrails look like, protecting against, AI somehow taking out all of humanity, but also allowing these nascent industries and companies to flourish?
I think that's what the executive order tried to do. I mean, on the one hand, existential risk, and the reason why it's so controversial is because it's hard to scientifically and technically identify. There are many computer scientists, for example, the chief scientist at Meta, who don't believe that this is actually a serious problem we need to worry about, at least not at this point in the game, and that there aren't adequate ways to regulate it because we can't scientifically define it or technically define it at this point in time. So what would regulations look like there? The jury is still out. In terms of ensuring innovation continues to proceed forward, perhaps some loosening of regulations could be helpful there. But at the end of the day, I think there's still many questions as to what AI policy is going to look like under this administration.
And Sinead, this is a question, real fast, this is a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while. I follow all your posts. Do you think that we are going to see artificial general intelligence reached now under this administration in the time frame?
That's a really great question. I don't think anybody has the date as to when AGI, we will reach artificial general intelligence. There are many different dates that are thrown out, but I will say we will see progress in artificial intelligence over the next couple of years, and this administration will largely be in the defining era of AI policy that governs these advancements, these critical AI advancements.
I appreciate your analysis so much. Sinead, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And tonight, there are some potential new concerns about possible conflicts of interest as President-elect Trump is about to be back in the White House. He still owns his social media company, Truth Social, plus there's the massive Trump organization, but that is just the beginning. Here's NBC's Brian Chung.
On the campaign trail, President-elect Donald Trump pushed Bibles, sneakers, and even his own cryptocurrency.
Crypto is the future.
But as he readies for the White House, it's his social media company that's raising eyebrows for potential conflicts of interest. Truth Social is the mainstay of the Trump Media and Technology Group, trading under the ticker DJT since March this year. According to its earnings statement, the company lost more than $19 million in the last quarter, but its valuation more than $5 billion, and a majority of it owned by Trump.
Is there a precedent for a president-elect coming into office with 115 million shares in a publicly traded company?
Well, there is no precedent. We already sort of ran this movie, but on a smaller scale the first time around, and now we're just going to see it on a much larger scale.
Trump already had a web of business dealings during his first term. While he handed over control of the Trump Organization to his sons, he continued to own it with its hotels, resorts, and golf courses. But what he didn't have, a social media platform competing against big tech companies, worrying some ethics experts.
If you've got a direct financial stake in that and you have a lot of sway and influence over what's going to happen there in terms of regulation, then I think it's pretty clear why that's a significant conflict of interest problem.
But Trump doesn't have to divest. While it's illegal for executive branch employees to work on government matters that will affect their own personal financial interest, it does not apply to the president or vice president. One rule that Trump does have to play by, the emoluments clause in the Constitution, which prevents government officials, including the president, from financially benefiting from foreign governments. Something that Richard Painter, a Bush White House ethics lawyer who has been a vocal critic of Trump, alleges he already did.
There was substantial evidence that the Trump Organization did profit from transactions with foreign governments during the first Trump term.
Painter helped bring an emoluments lawsuit from a nonprofit alleging more than 3,400 conflicts of interest. Congressional Democrats and Maryland and D.C. sued Trump too. But a federal appeals court dismissed the Democrats' lawsuit in 2020, saying they lacked legal standing to sue the president. Then the Supreme Court ended the other lawsuits, saying they were moot because Trump was no longer in office. Now, DJT stock brings another potential avenue for foreign investment that could trigger scrutiny.
If a foreign government were to buy a substantial block of stock and in effect be in a business partnership with Donald Trump, that could be a serious problem.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
Previous presidents like Jimmy Carter chose to avoid any problems by divesting. In Carter's case, from his peanut farm. But Trump's holdings, not just peanuts. Trump's transition team responding to our request for comment, saying in part, President Trump removed himself from his multi-billion-dollar empire to run for office and forwent his government's salary. Adding President Trump didn't get into politics for profit. Trump himself insists he has no intention of selling his shares of DJT, the stock bearing the president-elect's own name, a legal and ethical conundrum.
Brian Chung, thank you. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. And until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.